everyone. So for video assignment 4, um, what we had to do is make a lesson plan with the grade level and content and the goal and everything. So I'm just going to go ahead and get right to it. So my grade level, I did K through 2 because I'm at a primary school, and I just feel like, it might be a little different for the kindergartners than you do something for the second graders, but I feel like the lesson plan that I have could work for any grade level within that area, and that they would have fun. The content area that I was focusing on is communication skills, and let's see. Then the goal that I made with that is students will use effective communication skills. So the lesson is all about ways to communicate, and one of the essential questions that I have is, what are some ways humans communicate? And the students will learn different ways that they can communicate, with their classmates, with adults, everything like that. So I actually found this lesson plan. I took some ideas from the San Diego County District Attorney, which is kind of weird, but I was just like looking for things, and I just happened to click on this one thing, and it took me to this website, and it is called Project Roots. And so pretty much what that is it's just a way for kids to communicate and learn, essential skills that they'll need one day. So I thought it was really cool. And the lesson that I found that went with it is really great too, I thought. So I'm going to share that with you right now, the lesson plan that they have and that I kind of. Okay, so like I said, the essential question is, what are some ways humans communicate? So I would probably start the lesson off with asking students that question. What are some ways humans communicate? And a lot of them would say talking. That's the simple question. But there's other ways that people can communicate without words. So I think that would be something that I would have to tell them. Or I might say, well, let's find out through some activities and see. And I would also start with telling them that communication is what we do to give and get understanding of something. We can use body language, facial expressions. And as I was telling them this, I would show them, body language. Like if I'm slumped over, that means like I'm probably not the happiest person. Or if I'm sitting up tall and straight and smiling, then I'm in a great mood, And so I would demonstrate all these things, and I might even let them tell me, okay, well, I'm sitting like this. How do you think I feel? And I'm not looking at anyone, and see if they're able to tell me, especially for the older grades or second grade. I think it's very important to teach young people how to communicate because it allows them to maintain relationships, and they can resolve conflict easier. And so eventually it will lead them to getting jobs and keeping jobs and everything. So the length of the lesson would probably take about 30 minutes, hopefully, within the school, depending on what time they give. I know that like some schools don't have that, and so I feel like that would be a challenge for me, is finding that time to go into a classroom or having the kids come to my room. I know at one school I student taught at, they would have the students come to the counselor's classroom once a week and have their guidance lesson in there, which I think is so great. But I know at the school I teach at now, there's nothing like that. The counselor has come into my class once throughout the whole school year. So I feel like that would kind of be a barrier at my school if I was to counsel there, is to find that time. Okay, so the first thing that I would do, and I play this with my students in the classroom is the game telephone. And I feel like this game would help them they would have to use their ears and their voices to communicate. And so what they do is they can sit in a circle, and either I could come up with a phrase or sentence, or I could let one of the students come up with it, and they whisper it in their ears. And they see, they go around the circle and they see if by the end of the circle, if it's the same message or if it got changed, or if somebody just made something up because they didn't know. And so this activity would be an example of verbal communication because they have to speak clearly. Another game that I would play after that, so I would explain that that's verbal communication, which means we use our voices. Another game that we would play after that would be charades. And obviously this would be a example of nonverbal communication. So I could explain that that all communities all day, whether or not we're using words, you can still communicate. So that goes back to, you can look at facial expressions, body language, how somebody's, sitting there, that kind of goes with body language and all that. So charades goes along that part, along with nonverbal. So that would be something great to show them. Now, if you didn't have 30 minutes to do this lesson, you could always do 2 activities during your guidance lesson, and then maybe the next week come back, or focus on this for a whole week a whole month with a group or something. I just wanted to say that because I was talking about the 30-minute time restraint might not be enough. Another thing is, another activity they could do is have partners get in pairs and direct them to communicate hello to their partner 3 different ways. So that could be their voice, they could write it down, they could wave, or it could be something creative that they come up with. And I think that it would be very cool to see what they come up with, because I'm sure that somebody would come up with something very creative to say hello. So I really like that one. Now, you could do this all in one day if you have enough time, depending on how big the class is too, and time management and classroom management that you have. Or, like I said, do it over a month or a week, however long you have. So after the students got in pairs, they could do, they would still be in pairs, and you could have them communicate a feeling to their partner. So I could give an example of sad, angry, happy, excited, maybe confused, worried, something like that. And so the other partner will have to guess what feeling that they are portraying. So if somebody was sad, they could write, I feel sad, or make a facial expression, or just sit like this. And so the person could guess, okay, well, I think they're sad. And so they would guess. And that way it would be an example of the physical language, like how the person's sitting, the body language. Then, let's see. After that, so you can give examples from telephone and charades to demonstrate that what you want to communicate is not always what others understand. So that's how rumors and gossip spread. Now, this would be very important for the 2nd graders. I don't know if kindergartners know what rumors and gossip is really yet. I'm sure if that's a problem, then I would definitely address that. But if it wasn't an issue, I don't think I would bring it up yet in kindergarten. So I would go to explain that, someone tells someone a secret and it gets passed around just like in telephone, and it might end up completely different from what it started from. So that's what telephone can do, and that's how you can teach that lesson. So I can remind them at the end too, this is kind of like wrapping up the lesson, that being clear in your verbal and nonverbal communication is very important life skills, and you need to go ahead and start practicing them. And think about how you sit, and think about how you smile and look at others. Think about if you make other people happy just by looking at them, or do you make people worried about you because you look sad? All these things they can go ahead and start thinking about when they're in first grade, second grade, kindergarten. So then if I had time, which might be an issue, is I could have the students go and write in their journals. And that would be an example of nonverbal communication because they would be writing. And how do you communicate most often would be one of the journal prompts that they could use. Or now for kindergarten, I probably wouldn't make them write, or if I did, I would have a sentence starter and they could finish it. But this would be geared towards second grade. So how do you communicate most often? How would you get people to understand you if you couldn't communicate? So with that journal, they could see, they could write. Sorry, I kind of got distracted. How do you communicate most often? And how would you get people to understand if you couldn't communicate that way anymore? So this gets the students thinking about all the ways to communicate, what facial expressions can do, and how big that can make a statement. Again, this is from the San Diego County District Attorney, and it's Project Roots. So it gives a bunch of different things on how students can communicate and all different things. Now with this lesson, some of the barriers, I already said one might be the time restraint that I have. I don't think I personally have time management problems, but I feel like with the teacher wanting me to hurry, or what would be great is if I could bring the students into my classroom if I was lucky enough to have a classroom. But with this lesson, I think that limited funds wouldn't be an issue with this particular lesson. Now, at my school, I think it would be a problem. But overall, with this lesson, we don't really need anything except our bodies because we're looking at each other's faces and everything like that. Let's see. The environment barriers that I might have would be that I do work in a low-income community. But again, with this lesson, I feel that it's very, facial oriented, and I mean, you're talking a lot, communicating a lot, all those things. However, I think that some of those kids who do grow up in the low income community and some who aren't really at that level, they might express how they feel differently. So they might, show they're excited in a different way. Or maybe some of the kids don't know how to express they're excited. It just depends on that particular student. But the way that a low income student and then one who's not as low might express themselves might be completely different. So it's important for them to understand each other. Something personal that I would have to implement in my lesson is making sure that I can show them all the different facial expressions if I need to. I maybe could find a video. I feel like I would have a hard time doing this because when I'm in front of kids, I just want to smile because they make me so happy. So I would have to really focus on what I was doing, but I could always show a video and everything. But anyway, so that resource that I found was very great. And I know there's a ton of resources on communication and activities, but I know that lesson gave a lot of activities that you could do. And I think that it would really benefit the kids and everything. So, yeah.